What's up, guys? My name is Takeyah. I'm an orthodontic assistant, and in today's video I will be going over 5 things to remember as a new orthodontic assistant. As many of you may know, it is really overwhelming when you first get hired as an orthodontic assistant and you're new and you have no experience. So these are just going to be some things to remember so you can stay motivated and see your way through. I do orthodontic and dental videos every Tuesday, and I also do content with my family every Friday. So make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss out. All right, let's go. So one thing to remember always is to be confident. When you're learning procedures and you're trying to catch on, your confidence is going to be the thing that leads you and guides you. Initially, you don't feel confident because you don't know what you're doing. But in acting like you know what you're doing and having confidence will show the doctors, show the assistants, that you're taking initiative and that you're trying and that you have that go-to attitude. Yes, it's hard and overwhelming to keep that level of confidence when you make mistakes and you're unsure about things. But if you remain confident when learning and when messing up, you will get better. Another thing to remember is watch other assistants when you can. When you first get hired on as a new orthodontic assistant, you're usually training with one assistant and you're shadowing that one assistant the entire time. But I want to encourage you guys as a new assistant, whenever you have the opportunity to, watch and shadow other assistants, because there are many different ways you can do things in orthodontics. Every assistant does things differently. You can use different instruments. There's different techniques that can be done. Another assistant's way may be faster, or it may be easier for you to learn and pick up. So when you have that opportunity to see how other assistants work, you may decide that this way is better for you than the previous way you were taught. And no way is better. It's just going to be what's better for you. I learned that early on because the person that I was training with one day wasn't there. So then I was training with another assistant. And in training with that new assistant, I realized that they worked totally different. And it was just a big eye-opener to see the different ways I can do things. So in doing that, I quickly kind of found my method and how I wanted to do things. And I found what was easier and faster for me. The next thing you want to remember is you want to always explain what you're doing to the patients. And if you have parents with the patients, you want to make sure you're explaining what you're doing to them as well. This is really important as a new assistant because you don't want to be caught off guard with a question that you don't know the answer to in that moment. You avoid getting those questions if you explain what you're doing while you're doing them or prior to starting. Say when working, the patient or the parent says, "Hey, what's that you're applying to my teeth?" Or, "Hey, why did you just take a scan?" Or, "Hey, why are you placing that wire?" Instead of getting those questions and not knowing how to respond to those questions, because as a new orthodontic assistant, you don't know all the answers and you not have the answer right then and there. So a good way to avoid that is to just go ahead and explain in detail what you're doing. Whenever I get a parent or patient back, I make sure to explain everything. Once I explain everything, I then ask, "Do you have any questions?" Because I don't want to get the questions while I'm working. And as a new assistant, you don't want to get those questions while you're working. And then if they do have a question that I know the answer to, I will address it. And if I don't know the answer to the question, I let them know that I will make sure that the doctor knows. So when the doctor comes, they will address the answer. So if they tell me right then and there that it's a question that I don't know and I tell them I'll tell the doctor, I usually will step away at that moment and I'll let the doctor know the question, and then I'll come back to the patient and continue working. So then when the doctor comes to the chair, the doctor's then addressing the patient's concerns. So in doing that, I avoid getting questions while working. I avoid, just being stumped on the spot. This will avoid a lot of, problems and just a lot of awkwardness. The next thing to remember when working as a new orthodontic assistant is to always check your patient thoroughly before and after your procedure. And when I say this, I mean when you bring your patient back, when you untie, take all of the colors off, you want to make sure you're checking for any broken brackets. You want to make sure you at least tug lightly on each bracket, make sure nothing's loose, because if something is loose, you then will prep so the orthodontist can get the brace back on. I say this because this is really important because I've had it happen to me. I've untied a patient, and as I'm tying in the new colors, I realized that this patient has a loose brace. But I didn't know it was loose because everything stayed on and nothing came off when I took old colors off. It wasn't until I was placing new colors where I had more pressure on that bracket that I realized that it was loose. So then at that moment, I had to get the doctor back to my chair to replace that bracket. So it was a lot of inconvenience because I had to get the doctor to my chair twice, and I kept the patient in the chair longer than expected. And it could happen because you don't realize it. But if you check before by tugging on the brackets, you can find any potential loose brackets that you wouldn't normally find if you didn't tug on it a little bit. Any brackets that are loose will come off if you tug it a little bit. Sometimes patients may not know that they have a loose bracket because everything is tied in with the colors. We have patients come in all the time who have loose brackets, but you don't know until you untie the colors or until you're placing a thick wire or a new color on. So you want to avoid having the doctor come back to the chair and having to keep the patient longer by checking for anything loose before you get started. Also, you're checking after because you don't want your patient to come back because they have a poking wire or you did something so simple like leave a color off. You want to make sure when you have your patient in the chair, you've completed the procedure and the appointment, that you're checking for any poking wires or anything that will be uncomfortable to the patient. One thing I like to ask my patient is, do you feel anything poking and does everything feel fine? And if they say yes, I say great, and I still just double check to make sure nothing is poking and that everything looks fine. Because if not, you will have that patient back in as an emergency for poking wires or anything that they feel like is uncomfortable. So to avoid all of that, you want to make sure you're thoroughly checking before you start your procedure on the patient and after, before you dismiss the patient. As a new orthodontic assistant, one thing to remember is that you're new. Do not forget that you're new. This is the opportunity to learn. You want to make sure that you're jumping and you're volunteering to do procedures that you don't know and not to shy away from those procedures because you don't know what you're doing. The last thing you want to do is shy away from things you don't know and only do things you're comfortable with. And then you look up and you realize you've been working and you're 6 months in and you still don't know how to do a bonded retainer, or you don't know how to do something complicated like fit an appliance. Because when that happens, you'll find yourself asking for help and asking questions as an experienced orthodontic assistant 6 months in. It doesn't look good to be already working 6+ months or maybe even a year and you're still unsure about things. So now is the opportunity to ask questions and to do procedures you don't know, because you won't look silly asking for help because they know that you're still learning. This is the opportunity to take advantage of the learning curve. You are new. It's okay to mess up. It's okay to ask questions and to do all of that now. Well, those are just 5 things to remember as a new orthodontic assistant. I hope that you guys learned something new and that this was helpful to you. If you have any questions, go ahead and comment down below. Like this video, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.